Alright, so I'm going to try just kind of going through this build as it currently sits and show you some of the stuff that's going on. It's been a long project, kind of never stops. And the whole goal here is to build a compact, small-scale Lego RC car that is very accurate in the detailing and the layout of the vehicle, but then also has a full functioning automotive chassis underneath it. And I've been trying to utilize realistic suspension layouts and geometries and things of that nature to really up the realism. And so the overall kind of like concept here is that like this is a mid-90s mini truck that has been retrofitted into a high-tech electric drift vehicle. And that's kind of the layout of the whole build. And so it's kind of blending a scale model and an RC car. And so there's a lot going on here, and I've been really trying to tackle it as if I was designing and engineering a real car, because maybe at some point I'll try to build something like this in real life, and it's a little easier to figure all these details out in a plastic toy as opposed to steel. So yeah, I got the front suspension here, and this has been a long process to develop and get all the kinks worked out, but it's getting there. It's pretty dialed. And also, one of the concessions and kind of my overall philosophies on this build is I'm not trying to keep it 100% Lego, but I want to try to keep it as true to that goal as possible. And so there are some elements on the suspension that are cut pieces. So there's a lot of these links that have been cut down from the, I think it's like a 5 long toe ball end. And these are way more useful in this orientation. But of course, they're not really locked in there. And so they're not glued yet, but I'm going to use a little Elmer's glue, PVA glue, in here to hold them together. And then if I ever need to get them apart, I can just dissolve it in water. But using them in this fashion has really opened the doors to a lot more complex suspension layouts, and that was a concession I was willing to make. And also you can see down here in this gear rack, I've had to cut one of these gear rack pieces in half. So there's been a few pieces that have been cut and modified, but overall it's really a pretty true Lego build, and so I'm going to try to keep it as close to that as possible. And so here with this suspension, so I'll show you my secret to making this all work. So on the upper here, none of these Lego pieces get the toe ball or the lower ball joint in a good enough location. And so what I've done is I took this typical Lego steering element there, captured it with 2 black toe ball pieces on that little triangle fitting, and then this is one of these axles with the stop in the middle. And that, if you see, is just in the perfect position to get that lower ball joint inside the rim. And so it's actually inside the wheel location, because what you're looking for here is a steering axis between the upper and lower ball joint. It's generally pointing outward toward the contact patch of the tire, which is down about here. So like that's called your scrub radius, and Lego typically is like way inside, horrible scrub radius, and that way you can't get your wheels to tuck into the fenders, things like that, all sorts of bad properties. And so, and then this piece here, this kink, allows a little bit more clearance to really get this thing to articulate. And I'm gonna end up, I need to get a lot of parts, but I'm gonna glue these pieces together and just leave this lower A-arm as kind of an assembled piece part, as they say. And that's just one of those concessions I'm going to make. So, my goal with the gluing is like I'll use it to build an assembly that could be a Lego part in the future as a little individual piece, but I'm not using the glue to hold the thing together. More so just, hey, there's no piece that really fits the bill here, and so I'm kind of taking multiple Lego pieces and turning them into one component. And so, anyway here, yeah, so this has a long lower A-arm and a short upper A-arm, and that drives these springs that face back down in. So they're kind of cantilevered there. And that geometry, if I set it down, you can see when you compress the suspension, it gets some nice camber gain. And so as the car leans into the turn, the camber angle stays in a good range. And also, the way this is laid out is, this is supposed to be a drift truck because we have a lot of hardwood in our house, and I'm going to set this thing up to drift all over the hardwood without scraping it up, and, it's going to be a little inside toy. And so this suspension and steering layout has taken a long time to get to the point where you can get these really high steering angles and they operate smoothly through the entire range of motion. And yeah, I had a lot of different things I tried to get here, and eventually I was able to come back around to a real rack and pinion layout, which is a lot more realistic than some of the other things I was trying. And yeah, it worked out pretty cool. And I'd love to get this whole assembly down just a little tighter. We'll see if that's possible, because there's not much room in here. So that's kind of the front end. And yeah, see, so these parts right now are not glued, and they're just kind of there for the process. But the other thing too is because, when you load this suspension up, right, you're pushing up, and this whole assembly up here is driving the shock. And so this, you just saw that lower ball joint kind of popped right off, but in reality, it's only being held in. It's not supporting the weight. Like typically a real vehicle would pull the lower ball joint up and compress the shock maybe right here, and that's not going to work with these pieces. So, this layout here is a lot stronger the way that these pieces are put together. So that is the front end as it currently stands. I'm sure it'll change some more. And, that is going to sit. Let's see if I can get a good view here. That's going to sit right here. And I'm going to, I had it originally built with everything flat. And you can see also that this is, this does have caster in it. So this is offset 1/2, or, one little washer. So this top ball joint sits behind the lower ball joint, and that gets that caster angle. And the caster angle is really important to help the car drive straight, and in a drift, it's going to help pull the car, out of the drift and not let it like loop out. So that's pretty cool. And then the other thing we can do here too is we can lean the entire assembly back, and you see that a lot on like off-road cars. And that's so when you hit a bump, you're not hitting things like this and forcing the wheel to roll up. You're kind of running into it, and that's not typically something you see a lot in these drift cars, but I think I'm going to try to incline this a little bit because, driving over rugs and stuff in the kitchen, and I think it'd probably help. So I might try to give this guy some inclination here, and we'll see about that. Anyway, that is kind of the front, and then I've been doing a lot of work here on this rear end of this thing, and it's really close. It's finally getting there. So yeah, I wanted to kind of make this video to show. And what we've got going on down here is, okay, so yeah, you can hear that. That's a thing that I have to address. So this is a semi-trailing arm rear suspension, and that's because you have a pivot here and a pivot here, and they're not in a straight perpendicular line. So imagine just like a typical swing arm, like where it just go boing, 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 up and down. That would be a trailing arm, and this is a semi-trailing arm. And by offsetting these positions, and they're also changed in elevation slightly, you can change and control the way that the tire travels through the suspension. And so the whole goal here is to get camber gain when the car is rolled in a turn. And let's see, maybe if I turn everything around, you could see that. And so with this, here, let's set it down. So as the car rolls, you can see that the wheel doesn't roll at the same rate as the body, and that's a beneficial trait. And so it starts off with a little bit of, I guess you'd say that's positive camber, and then it's going to ride height at about 0, and then settle into a few degrees of negative camber on full compression, and that's pretty awesome. And so the other thing here that's going on is, and this whole, this is a small Lego car. This is way smaller than like the regular Lego supercars. So there's it's really, really tight packaging. And so I've had to really think about how things have been laid out. And this setup here is pretty cool because it packages, and you can see that the swing arms or the trailing arms are dropping behind the body panel. And here, I'll take this off because you can hear that click. That's this guy right here is catching, that corner is catching on this little lip. And so if I get rid of that, you can see how this is operating. But that click goes away. So I got to change that a little bit. But, this whole thing just kind of fits perfectly in this truck chassis, and it's crazy that it all is fitting here. It's really cool, actually. But this arm is driving a spring, and it's pretty hard to see here now, but you can see some of those other posts I made where I kind of show how this works. Yeah, you're not going to really see in there. But it drives the little connecting arm from the Lego piston. Here you can see it through the gap maybe. Pushes the piston inside the cylinder, and that compresses this spring. And so the other thing that's cool is I got this set up so that I can now have an adjustable spring in the back. And that's going to be really helpful to mostly like level this car out. So, I'll get the front is just the regular shock absorber thing. And, I did a torsion bar version of this that was adjustable and, using a similar concept here, but I think we're going to try to avoid that just because it takes up too much room in the interior. And so the way this is right now, it's kind of hard to turn, but I just have that 8-tooth gear fixed in place, and it's kind of captured on all sides there, and that pushes the top end of the spring in, and I can change how much preload is on the spring there, and that's been pretty sweet. So definitely digging how that is working, and got to do that on the other side. But yeah, here you can see, that piston is getting pushed up as this operates. And so the other thing is, like, you could potentially like run the shock right here, right? Seems like that would be a good solution, but obviously there's not a lot of room. But it actually works out that with this layout of suspension and just, there's some play in these Legos, right? That doesn't drive the shock very well, and so positioning it all here really helps drive that shock nice and smoothly. And so that's how it worked out. And it's crazy that it fits in here the way it does, because those shocks are able to sit right in this void underneath where the seats will be. And so let's see, can I get that good? Yeah, so there's man, let me see if I can change my, my camera. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so there's like a little shelf in there. It's kind of hard, it's really hard to see, but it all sits right on this nice little shelf that's three studs high. And so I'm gonna build the seats on top of that. And the whole idea here is like, you got a full interior, there's a cage in here. I had a cage going around the back that we're gonna put back in once this thing is further along. So it's like, a scale RC car that's built out of Lego. And I don't know, I think that's cool. And so, you saw, I think, hopefully in some of these other posts you saw here, but I've got the tailgate. And the tailgate is it's driven by a little, I can't really do it in the way I'm positioned here, but here, let's see. it just drives those pins out a little bit, and that's enough that it snaps right into place and locks this guy. And then the other thing I want to do is I do want to get these lights all working. So like the electronics is a whole other element of this that I will get into, but I want to have lights that operate in here. And so these lights are, I'm pretty stoked on this whole area back here, but these are just like these little cheese wedges and some studs on this hinge bracket. But there's enough room that I think with some of these like little micro LEDs, I can fish the lights through here, or the wires, get the wires out and underneath, and then route the wiring up and get lights. So that'd be sweet. And the other thing is I'm hoping to get anti-roll bars built in here. And my goal is to hook it up and hook the roll bar in the back here up from this someplace on this top side. A link, same thing over here, a link, ball joints, and then run an anti-roll bar across right here. You can see there's this route right here that I could get the arm out, the leverage arm. And as these wheels go up and down, you know, these will pull an anti-roll bar in the same direction. And then if it is opposite, it's going to want to transfer the load through the anti-roll bar and pull the other wheel back up. And I think I can fit that in. It's just kind of, you know, everything's a squeeze. But that's what's going on here. And then I still need to like rebuild this area. I kind of was messing around with it last night to get the clearance. I had it more securely fastened, so these motors are like right up against the floor of the bed, and they're really like hung off the bed. So like the way this load is all carried here too is like this whole chassis element in here. It's one unit, kind of snaps into place. There's a long black beam, Technic beam that runs all the way through here that helps support this, and then the bed is pretty solid, but it's like cantilevered from a couple fasteners back in here. You can see right there. So that whole thing kind of was like hanging off the back, and you know, it's pretty stiff. It's gonna, once it's all really together, it's pretty stout, which is sweet. That's been really something I've been obviously working towards, given that I want this thing to really operate correctly. But yeah, so the motors are just like hung right there, and I had this like interconnected frame that kind of ran through here, and what was happening is these axles were not getting enough clearance, and so like you can see here what's going on. There's, you know, black frame elements that were driving across right here, and so like it was nice and stiff. It kept these all really locked together, but as that axle came into this lowest position, it was interfering, and so I couldn't get the full travel. What happened to my, oh yeah, here. So here's my end stop, my bump stop. This is pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked on this little solution. This little guy fits on there halfway, and then as this wheel comes in, you get a nice squishy end of travel bump stop, and you can see like just takes advantage of that bit of clearance that's there. Pretty stoked on all the fitment, and like these wheels are close. I'm gonna have to 3D print wheels that are better suited. None of these wheels really fit perfectly. I mean, they fit this way, but like this wheel is so fat that it just doesn't look very realistic. It does have like the Isuzu snowflake pattern, which is pretty sweet. I'd like to, this is supposed to be an Isuzu pickup. So yeah, so that's pretty cool, right? So then like when this thing's bottomed out, you can see it's like, let's get all this crap out of the way. It sits like right there, and it'll still roll as it's bottomed out. So that's pretty cool, right? And you know, I'm hoping most of the time I'll be driving around about like a real looking ride height. See that suspension operate? It's pretty slick. Yeah, so then I've got this door concept here that I had a build version where this is like one of these little axe pieces, and I'm gonna axe that, and I'm gonna try to do like an actual covered door handle here. I got a way to do that, And so this thing, you slide it forward, and your door opens up, and it just goes into one of those Technic pin slot things, those axle slots with the cross holes. And then, you know, the door build here is kind of like going to operate. And you can see, like, I've got this thing all ripped apart, but if you look at some of the other posts, you can see, like, kind of the general layout of the whole front end here and how the hood looks and stuff. And the other thing that's cool, too, is, like, yeah, so I got this whole steering servo all mounted down here. It was in a different location before, and I think this is going to work better because my other goal is, like, the, you know, this is the control box currently. And that guy sits right down in here where the dashboard would be. And, you know, there's cables are in the way. But it's good. I want it to sit right there. And then, you know, that's the dashboard. And then, yeah, what else? Like these pieces here, I got to buy Weebrick. Makes like white ones of these at the toe ball ones. So I'm trying to keep this mostly Lego, but I'm gonna buy some Weebrick parts, mostly the ones that don't have studs on top, because you know they're cheap and they are good quality. But yeah, most of these Legos are like freaking 50 years old. These are my uncle's Legos, a lot of these white ones. So, and I'm no child myself, so they got some vintage vibes going on here. Kind of keeps the patina. That's like kind of the vibe too, right? Is like it's an old, you know, dumpster dove truck that's been brought back to life as a you know, modern EV drifter thing. So here's my bumper build currently, and so you know this guy sits. It needs one stud underneath here, and then that'll line back up. And that sits right here, and you can see in the other pictures in the old posts how the front grille will be kind of laid out. And yeah, Weebrick also makes a little part, like a clear, where is it? One of these shapes in a 1x2 in a clear orange, so that'll be like perfect for my turn signal. We're gonna get that, and that'll be my bumper build. And you know, this is pretty crazy. I got this kind of going on. Pretty stoked on some of these solutions. I got two versions going on here on the side. And then, you know, I need five studs, and I can't do these tiles. So I got to do something else there to cover that up. And then, yeah, I need some pieces. I got some gray ones down there that need to be white. Or maybe I'll do this front bumper. If you see in one of those other posts I made, like, you could get these trucks in various different, you know, this could be gray or just the body color white, and you have black trim along the side or white trim. So, you know, there's a couple different versions, and I gotta figure out what color scheme looks quite the best. I have white right now, so it's gonna be white, but yeah, this uses a lot of these new round studs to kind of get these angles happening here. This took a lot of dorking around to figure something out, and like these pieces are cool. I'll just like show you. It's, you see that there? Built with those middle brackets, and that's kind of how this whole center section is supported. But it's only off this one. This two studs right here is holding up the whole thing. See? Let's see. Put it back together. Once it's all together, it seems pretty stable. I'm sure once I crash it into stuff, it'll blow up, but you know, it kind of makes it more realistic, right? Like you crash your RC car, it's fine, and that's not very realistic. You know, you just ding your regular car into anything, and it's messed up. So, you know, with the Lego, you can crash it. It's just like real life, right? You have to fix it. So that guy goes right there. But yeah, that's kind of the current status of the build. Now, you know, the other thing I guess I didn't get into here is like the electronics, right? And so this is just one of these guys here, these Amazon special, I don't know, it's Kata or something like that. And I've actually been pretty impressed with how well it works. Battery power is really good. It seems to have a lot of juice. And this controller obviously sucks, but the app is, you know, very Chinese, but seems to be able to do some stuff. So, you know, that's cool, but I really don't think this is going to cut it, because what's going on here is, you know, you didn't really realize is like you got two motors driving back here. And so it definitely opens the doors to some interesting possibilities, right? You could drive these together. And so that was the other thing. That's why I did this, is I didn't want to have a differential, and like I wanted to keep the drive line as absolutely short as possible, because I might try to run some bearings and some special customized parts in here to support the drive line. It doesn't just wear everything out really quick. So, you know, wanted to keep the drive line super short, no differential. It's a drift truck, so, you know, have a spool in there anyway, no diff anyway. And I was like, well, you know, and obviously, like every time you do a 90-degree turn or any kind of direction change in a drive line, you're losing efficiency. So it's like, just keep everything right in line here. And, you know, I just got, the way these drives are set up is, it's one of those, what is it, a 24 tooth, and then I think that's a 12 or something. And it's you know, you could do an 8 if it was down here in the middle, but these 12 tooth ones fit, I think it's 12. They fit nicely when set up, so that's cool. And then this like CV axle just perfectly tucks right in there along that motor. And, you know, this guy is just like, it's pretty short. And but anyway, yeah, I'm getting off track. These, you know, you can do cool stuff. You can drive this together, and you can drive this thing. And so in theory, this whole car could be set up as like a regular car where you hit the gas and both motors turn at the same time, and it becomes a, you know, it's just like a solid axle is what it would be like. You know, because each wheel is going to spin the same rate at the same time. And you could also do independent control, so you could do like tank steering essentially. And so you could go full forward, and that'd be like just hitting the gas regular, but then you could turn this car by driving one wheel less than the other wheel. And, you know, especially with this being a drift vehicle, the little bit of testing that I've done, that really helps to like control, because as it's kind of like looping out into oversteer, you can, you know, I've just been doing this little controller just by like, you know, hitting both buttons at the same time and doing that, which is obviously pretty janky. But even that alone gives you a lot of control to really keep the car from looping out. And so, like, you know, a drift RC car uses an electronic stabilizer called gyro. And I feel like it might be possible to get away without something like that with this, because it offers so much more control. But that's the other end of the electronics. But like I'm definitely not an electronics guy, so I'm an industrial designer and kind of like a hardware engineer. So this is my forte, not really electronics. So if anybody wants to assist me, I would be very open to help. Otherwise, I'm just gonna have to trudge along here and figure this stuff out as I go. But the other thing you could do here too is you could, like, and most EVs are doing, like modern EVs, is, you know, you hit the gas, they go, but your traction control is handled via a dual motor drive. And, you know, if you turn left, you could essentially have a computer can predict how much speed difference there is between these two wheels at what kind of turn you're trying to make. And it could, you know, you could drive this wheel slower than this outside wheel at the right amount to make a nice, powerful turn. And that would be, it's like, what I would love to do is have, like, you know, your controller and have it with like a 3-mode setup to where you could switch between like a regular drive mode, the tank steer drive mode, a traction control mode. And so I think, you know, why this has been cool and kind of opened the door to this whole project, as things have gone along and this thing's turned into what it is, I'm like, man, this thing needs, like, it needs the real deal. And because I would love for this thing to be like, you know, close to what you'd see is like one of those real RC drift cars. or like the scale RC, like the scale crawlers are really cool. And that's kind of more what I'm looking for here is like, you know, this thing's got some heft to it. And so, of course, I've been trying to build it as light as possible. But, you know, it's got some heft and I expect to get some body roll and get some like realistic dynamics to the car so that when, you know, if you film it or anything, it looks like a real little truck driving around. So, you know, I think that'd be great to be able to like switch to your drive modes and be able to like and do all that. And this guy is kind of in my stand-in. And so like what I'm hoping is maybe, okay, so that doesn't work. And the other thing too is like those Lego servos, those fake Lego servos are terrible. They only go, you know, obviously most people know, they go all the way 90, center, all the way 90 the other direction. So you can't get any control out of your steering. So what I'm gonna have to probably do, and again, I want to keep it looking like a Lego build. I don't want it to look like, you know, a bunch of wires and crap all over the place. And I have 3D printers and stuff and can do CAD. So what I might end up doing is like, if I can figure out the electronics, I might try to create, you know, package the electronics within a similar size container box, and I guess I'll need to figure out what I need. But yeah, like I said, I know I can do this because I've been looking around, and I see people, you know, you can do RC tank steering and you can do mixing, and I'm not sure about the controllers, you know, I don't know a lot about this RC stuff. I'm kind of learning. But so I got to figure all that out. But yeah, it'll be pretty cool, I think, once if it's ever done. You know, it's a project car. It just never gets finished. But I've been pretty stoked on it. It looks pretty cool. I think it'll look pretty cool when it just, you know, is like a display piece, and people can come and say, "Oh, what's that?" and pull it down and drive it around. Kind of cool. So yeah, that's the car as it stands. Thanks for watching this far. Take it easy. Bye.